Hello and welcome back to the course on blockchain. And today we're going to talk about the DAO attack. So the DAO was one of the first decentralized autonomous organizations created by Vitalik himself and some other people, and it was created in 2016 on Ethereum. So you use Ethereum as its core protocol, and the concept behind it was to create a venture capital fund where it would help organizations, it would help with the development of decentralized applications to run on the Ethereum blockchain, meaning that this is like a noble cause to help others start their own projects that would be decentralized and that would run on the blockchain. And this DAO organization, the DAO, was stateless, so it's an interesting fact about it that it didn't belong to any country, and that already started raising some questions with authorities, but that was something that would have been solved later. In the meantime, the DAO was crowdfunded through a token sale, and by May 2016, when the crowdfunding was over, they raised $150 million. That was the most successful crowdfunding campaign in the history of the world. $150 million. And yeah, so people just believed in this whole idea of decentralization, of making things on the blockchain and moving to this new type of internet, new type of world. And so it's a great thing to see. However, unfortunately, there was an error in the code of the DAO, an error in the code of the way the smart contracts were coded for this autonomous organization. As we discussed previously, the decentralized autonomous organizations, they are governed entirely by smart contracts rather than people. And therefore, the DAO was attacked and hacked on June 2016 for $50 million. And the interesting concept or notion here is that the attacker didn't actually do anything illegal. They just found this flaw in the code and they used it to leach money out of the DAO account into their own account. And so everybody saw this happening. Everybody saw the money moving, like just being leached from one account to the other, and nobody could do anything about it. Nobody could do anything because the DAO is autonomous. You can't just tell it what to do. It does things on its own. It's governed by its own algorithms, its own code, and at the same time, there's this flaw in the contract which allows the attacker to perform this as a valid transaction, as a valid part of the contract. And the contract is immutable. You cannot change the contract because once it's on the blockchain, it's on the blockchain. You can't just go and change things around because that would defeat the purpose of the blockchain. And so that was a major problem. However, the good news was that the funds were, once again, according to the way the DAO was coded, there was a fail-safe mechanism, which meant that funds cannot be taken out entirely, like even though the attacker moved them to another account, that was a child company of the DAO, and then they could move them out later on to their own account, like completely take them away, but they would have to wait 30 days or somewhere around 30 days. And so in that time, the whole community had opportunity to think and decide what to do. And so there was a dilemma. The dilemma is the code law? Code is law or not? And what that says is, on one hand, part of the community said, no, we're not going to do anything about it because code is law. That's how the contract was coded, and we cannot just go and change things that are supposed to be immutable. And so we have to leave it as it is. The other part of the community said that no, it's too much money. It's $50 million. It belongs to people. So we're going to do a hard fork, and we'll talk about forks in the next tutorial. We'll do a hard fork of the blockchain, and we will change the rules. And basically, or what they said is like we'll do a hard fork, and we'll change the rules, and that means that we'll be able to change the rules of this contract. We'll basically revert the rules of this contract so that we can pull the money back and give it back to the owners. And so there was this dilemma, and eventually they ended up doing a hard fork. It was Vitalik's initiative to do the fork, and they did the hard fork. And now a hard fork doesn't always imply that there's going to be a split, but in this case there was a split, and because some people were not happy with that decision, not because they wanted to protect the attacker, but because they wanted to preserve the integrity of this concept of the blockchain, that if there's a smart contract, it's a contract for a reason. You cannot just go in and revert things. And at that hard fork, Ethereum split into Ethereum and Ethereum Classic. So what we'll see in the next tutorial is on this version of Ethereum, the hackers' money went back to the DAO and got distributed back to the people. But in this version of Ethereum, Ethereum Classic, the hackers' money stayed in Ethereum Classic. It's like two parallel worlds. After a hard fork, there's like two parallel worlds, and basically this money, it got duplicated among the two. In this one, it got returned to the owners. In this one, it went to the hack. I know it sounds very, very insane. Like, how can we just make, out of $50 million, how can we make double the amount? But that's how it works, and we'll discuss this more in the coming tutorial, and also I'll recommend some reading just now. And in the end, the hacker walked away with $67 million in Ethereum Classic, worth of Ethereum Classic. 67, that's because this was calculated later and the exchange changed. So at the time it was less, but if they held on to their money, then at some point it became $67 million. And so another important thing to note here, that the problem was in the DAO code, not in Ethereum itself. It was a problem in how the smart contract was coded, not the Ethereum platform. So this was a short overview of the DAO attack. I know a few things might still be confusing. For instance, how could everybody walk away happy that both the DAO investors got their money back and the Ether Fieth got their money? So how could that be possible? Well, we'll talk more about forks in an upcoming tutorial. But for now, if you'd like to learn more about the DAO attack, like all the details, how it all unraveled and how everything worked, then I would like to recommend a wonderful piece by Bloomberg. It's called The Ether Thief. We'll include the link in the course notes, and it's very well written. It reads like a story, like a thriller or a detective story. You can see like additional comments and quotes. You can always like go to the right here and find out the details of things that are being discussed. On the left, you've always got the code if you want to have a look at what they're talking about, where the error in the code was and things like that. And another thing I like is that here at the end they say it's been about a year since the DAO attack, so they've added some information, or maybe that's the time when they wrote it. Nevertheless, so there's some aftermath on what happened and things like that. So great piece by Bloomberg. You can definitely find out all the details you need or want from here. It's called the Ether Thief. And yeah, I hope you are excited. I mean, like, not about the attack, but just like about forks and the whole notion that people are super supportive of this world, that they are investing millions of dollars, that there's promise. Basically, that shows that there's promise in blockchains and in decentralized organizations and apps. I know even though this one failed, that's how things start. They fail, and then eventually, after a few mistakes, we learn and we change the world. There we go. So hope you enjoyed today's tutorial, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, enjoy blockchains.